Imagine this. You wake up one Tuesday morning and discover the true nightmare of modern existence.
Oh, this is a good one.
That your entire
felt his work failed to capture the pure, terrifying vision he held in his mind.
Okay, here's where we get a critical insight into Kafka's genius. His instruction regarding the illustration for the 1915 publication, this is a detail that just reveals his entire psychological.
He argued that most people live behind a self-made cage or bars. They fear freedom, they fear responsibility, and they fear the unknown that is inherent in true liberty.
So instead of freedom, they crave safety.
Exactly. They prefer the certainty of the herd. They want usage instructions, application forms, and rules over the unpredictable nature of miracles or genuine independent liberty.
So when we view Donosham through that lens, Gregor Samsa's transformation isn't a random curse.
Not at all. It is a violent, desperate, subconscious attempt to escape the rigid structure of his life. A life defined by endless travel, crushing debt, and subservience.
Even if the escape manifests as the most hideous, non-functional creature imaginable, it's still an escape from the cage of his human obligations.
Precisely.
We're going to transition now into a detailed summary of the novella. We'll use an audiobook style that focuses on the visceral and psychological details in the source material.
Pay close attention, because this narrative moves quickly, but the details tell the whole story.
The story begins with the unthinkable morning. Gregor Samsa, a traveling salesman, wakes up transformed into a giant insect. A devastation.
And the transformation isn't gradual. It is instant and complete.
The physical description is essential to understanding his horror. He's lying on his hardened, dome-like back, like armor. Zır gibi sirleşmiş sırtının üstünde.
His abdomen is brown, partitioned with arch-shaped lines, and he's trapped by his own biological armor.
And the legs? The sheer number of his thin legs, atması inçilikteki çok sayıda bakak, are just helplessly waving.
They're useless. He can't get any stability. He can't turn over. He keeps trying to get into his usual sleeping position, but he just falls back onto his hard shell over and over.
But here is the profound, heartbreaking detail. His first thought is not about the monumental physical horror of his body.
No.
It's anxiety over his tiresome job, specifically missing the 5 o'clock train.
The cage has been externalized, but the prisoner's mind remains obsessed with routine.
He reflects on the exhausting nature of his work.
Yeah.
The constant grinding travel, the irregular meal.
And the continuously changing, never long-lasting, always insincere relationships of a salesman. This job is the nexus of his suffering, but it's also his entire definition of self.
And the invisible chain holding him there is debt. He realizes he's trapped in this job because he needs 5 or 6 more years to pay off his parents' overwhelming debt to his boss.
He is not a son, he is an asset, a utility. He's basically a slave before he even becomes a bug. His human form was purely functional.
As the clock ticks past 5, the external world starts to penetrate his isolation.
At 6:30 a.m., the arrival of authority manifests in the terrifying form of the mudir bey, the chief clerk himself.
So this is an escalation. Professional concern has now become a hostile invasion of his private space.
And the family's already panicking. You can hear their voices muffled by the closed door. The mother's soft, worried voice, the father's heavy, impatient hammering.
And his sister greets soft, pleading inquiries.
When Gregor tries to respond, he's horrified to find his attempt to speak is mixed with this impossible, bitter whistle, akabir sluk. His voice, his last real connection to humanity, is gone.
And the chief clerk, who is the proxy for the company and the debt, he immediately leaps to suspicion.
He bypasses concern entirely. He directly accuses Gregor of being incredibly negligent and ominously hints at payment receipts entrusted to him.
So this isn't a wellness check, it's an interrogation.
Right. It's threatening his job security, his reputation, and the family's entire economic foundation.
This brings us to a huge turning point, the struggle for the door. Driven by this primal fear of losing his job, the source of his utility, Gregor attempts to open the locked door.
And the source material just captures the sheer agony and the mechanical difficulty of this effort.
He doesn't have hands. He has to manipulate the key with his jaws, which are powerful but really clumsy.
And this self-mutilating effort is described with disturbing realism. A brownish liquid, probably a mix of blood and saliva, begins dripping onto the floor.
That detail emphasizes the violence he has to inflict on himself just to do a simple, mundane task.
And yet, through sheer, desperate will, he succeeds, without a locksmith.
The door swings open, revealing his horrifying form to the waiting world, and chaos just ensues.
It's a catastrophe. The chief clerk sees him, lets out this piercing, that the source says sounds like a sound of wind, and immediately retreats.
The mother collapses onto the sofa, and she overturns the coffee pot in this symbolic moment of domestic disorder.
The father, though, he reacts with immediate masculine aggression. He clenches his fists.
And in one final, futile attempt to preserve his human function, Gregor tries to defend himself. He tries to speak to the chief clerk, arguing his dedication, pleading his case.
But his speech is, of course, completely incomprehensible. It just cements his transformation in the eyes of the external world.
It's a devastating moment of miscommunication. Gregor's talking about accountability and dedication.
While the chief clerk just hears the hideous buzzing of a threat, and the father steps in, becoming the enforcer of society's rejection.
The climax of this first chapter is this terrifying chase. The father, dressed only in his nightclothes, grabs a walking stick and a newspaper.
And begins driving Gregor back toward his room, striking the ground. The source mentions the sound of his naked boots creaking. The sounds are sharp, aggressive, purposeful.
And this chase leads to the critical, devastating injury that cripples Gregor for the rest of the novella.
The father, in a fit of rage, hurls apples from a fruit bowl. One apple embeds itself completely in Gregor's back.
The shock and the paralyzing pain are instant. He can't move.
And it's important to note the nature of that violence. The father, the symbol of the failed capitalist who is dependent on Gregor, becomes the agent of his ultimate physical harm.
And the mother only intervenes after this explicit act of violence. She pleads for her son's life only once he's already incapacitated.
And that apple remains lodged in his back, a festering wound, a constant tragic reminder of the rejection he suffered from the man he sacrificed everything to protect.
With that image of the wounded bug trapped behind a closed door, we move into the slow decline. The process of alienation and shifting family dynamics that truly define Kafkaesque horror.
Following the attack, the family's dynamic just completely reconfigures.
Greet, the sister, assumes the role of Gregor's sole caretaker. And initially, there's a flicker of compassion, right?
A flicker, yes. She tries to figure out what he might eat, and she recognizes he preferred spoiled, discarded things, rotten vegetables, old bones, cheese over fresh food. He has literally become a creature of decay and refuse.
But this compassion erodes very quickly.
It does, because of the absolute communication gap. Since Gregor's cries are unintelligible, the family just collectively stops believing he can understand them.
And that assumption is crucial. It allows Greet to start speaking of him impersonally, referring to him as it, even when she's in the room with him. He's being objectified.
And the consequences of the apple attack are physical and symbolic. The wound festers in his flesh, and it severely limits his movement.
So the brief solace he found in climbing high, clinging to the ceiling, this grotesque form of freedom, is no longer possible. He is pinned down by the weight of past violence.
And as Gregor physically suffers, the family undergoes an economic metamorphosis in response to losing their primary support. They are forced to confront the harsh reality of their finances.
The father is finally compelled to reveal a family secret. A small capital, an anapara, survived his bankruptcy 5 years earlier.
Right, and it was supplemented by untouched interest and Gregor's meager savings. But this money is minimal. It's only enough to sustain them for maybe 1 or 2 years. It has to remain untouched for emergencies. They have to start earning a living immediately.
The change in the family members is immediate and visually striking. It's a complete inversion of roles.
The father, who was previously heavy and asthmatic after 5 years of rest funded by Gregor, takes a job as an usher in a bank.
And the most striking visual of his reclaimed authority is that shiny buttoned blue uniform he wears constantly, even at home. He's traded his nightgown for the uniform of bureaucracy.
The mother takes up the painstaking work of sewing fine undergarments for a fashion house, just laboring for minimal pay.
And Greet, the sister who previously focused on her violin, becomes a salesgirl, a ticket-tarlik, and she starts diligently studying shorthand and French, hoping for a better, self-sufficient future.
They're all living in a state of exhaustion, anxiety, and quiet despair. The apartment is way too large for their budget, but moving is impossible.
How would they transport Gregor?
Exactly. The insurmountable logistical and psychological problem of moving the unspeakable family shame.
This tension culminates in the most poignant moment of Gregor's struggle to retain his last shred of humanity, the battle for the room.
Greet decides the room should be entirely emptied, leaving only the sofa to give Gregor maximum crawling space. She believes he no longer requires or even uses human furniture.
But the mother objects, and she introduces this profound psychological argument.
She fears that removing the furniture, which provided a warm atmosphere and reminders of his past life, would signify that we have given up all hope of his recovery.
She clings to the belief that if the room stays the same, Gregor might psychologically return to his human state. He might forget the time he was a bug.
And that time he was a bug is synonymous with the time he was independent and free of debt and obligation. The mother wants him to forget his freedom and return to the economic herd.
Gregor, listening to this debate, realizes the furniture is vital for retaining his human identity, his sense of self.
So he attempts a desperate act of resistance against his own physical degradation. He tries to save the framed picture of the woman in furs, the Kirkli Kadenresmi, which he cherishes.
How does he do that?
By climbing onto it and covering it completely with his repulsive insect body.
It's a tragic moment. He's risking his life to protect a symbol of his human desire.
But the consequence is devastating. When the mother sees Gregor clinging to the wall like a repulsive gargoyle, she cries out, "Aman Tanrum!" and collapses in an armchair.
So his desperate assertion of humanity only causes physical collapse in the one person who is trying to defend his memory.
And Gregor retreats. He realizes he has to sacrifice his own need for identity for the physical stability of his family. This incident just reinforces the crushing reality that his attempts to communicate only cause trauma, forcing him further into isolation.
As his physical existence deteriorates, his isolation deepens. The family hires a new cleaning woman, a Gundaliksi Kadin.
And they basically cease even trying to engage with him.
This new cleaning woman is a large, bony, older woman, and she replaces the previous servant who fled in terror.
Crucially, she's the only one in the house who isn't afraid of Gregor. She displays total dehumanizing indifference.
She calls him the old dung beetle to his face.
And she actively provokes him, sometimes with a broom, just treating him purely as detritus.
And Gregor stops eating entirely. He slips into a deep apathy. The room descends into decay, filling with unused food, dust, and trash.
Gret, exhausted from her demanding job and studies, now just cleans the room quickly and carelessly. She neglects him entirely. The family has ceased to treat him as a person or even a pet.
He is now purely a confined source of mess.
He's a logistical problem that has to be contained for the sake of the boarders.
And this containment fails spectacularly with the climax and resolution, the final scene. To increase their income, the family rents out one room to three serious-looking, long-bearded boarders, the Kirakiler.
These tenants are meticulously focused on cleanliness and order, which increases the family's burden to hide Gregor. In an ironic twist, the family moves the ash bucket and trash bin into Gregor's room to appease the boarders.
It just intensifies his mess and affirms his status as literal waste.
And the ultimate eruption of chaos occurs when the boarders demand Greet play her violin in the living room.
Gregor, drawn by the music, which reminds him of his secret desire to fund Greet's conservatory studies, crawls out.
It's his final, pathetic attempt at human connection. He appears in the living room, covered head to toe in dust, hoping to persuade Greet to play for him alone, seeking communion through art.
This leads to the brutal turning point, the ejection of the vermin. The middle boarder spots Gregor and points. The music stops instantly.
The artistic human moment is shattered by the presence of the reality he represents.
The boarders, enraged, cite the disgusting conditions in this house and with this family, and they immediately terminate the lease.
And they refuse to pay for their stay.
So this sudden loss of income, coupled with the profound shame and exposure, it just shatters the family's fragile new stability. They realize the hidden shame has a tangible cost.
This humiliation triggers Greet's ultimate devastating rejection. She slams her hand on the table and declares, "It cannot go on like this." The language is final, aggressive, and absolute.
Her demand that follows is the final act of emotional parricide.
"We must try to get rid of it." And then comes the critical, chilling realization that provides the logical justification for their action.
She says, "You must put the thought out of your head that this is Gregor." If it were Gregor, he would have realized long ago that living with such an animal is impossible for humans and would have left of his own accord.
That denial is the most gut-wrenching moment in the novella. She is demanding not just his disappearance, but his self-erasure.
And the true tragedy is the realization that his sacrifice, his death, is the only acceptable solution that will allow them to move forward.
And Gregor understands. He agrees with her desperate assessment. He struggles to return to his room, feeling a sense of love and agreement with Greet's horrifying words, accepting his own fate as the only way to alleviate their burden.
He dies peacefully on the floor around 3 a.m. His last breath is weak. His body is found by the cleaning woman, flat, dry, and abandoned.
The description is so antiseptic, it's devoid of life or struggle. It's almost like a discarded husk.
The story ends not with sorrow, but with the family's profound relief and renewal.
The cleaning woman discovers the corpse and reports it with just callous indifference. Look, it's dead. It's lying there, totally twitching its tail.
The family's reaction is immediate and profound gratitude. "Now we can thank God," says the father.
And he then firmly instructs the boarders to leave the house immediately, reclaiming his authority and his sense of ownership now that the source of the shame is gone.
They decide to take the day off. Immediately. For rest and a trip outside the city to the open air, symbolically shedding the oppressive atmosphere of the apartment and their guilt.
They feel a sense of release, optimism about their jobs. They plan to move to a smaller, better house.
And in the final chilling scene, the parents reflect on their future and this new realization about Greet. They notice that, despite all her worries, she has grown into a beautiful and full-bodied girl.
And their final thought is that it's now time to find her a suitable husband. That last sentence is horrifying in its banality. The functional male breadwinner, Gregor, has been eliminated and immediately replaced by the functional female commodity, Greet, ready to be traded in the social marketplace for security and income.
The family structure, stripped of Gregor's useless body, reasserts itself based entirely on utility.
Chillin'.
So with that sequence of events fresh in our minds, let's zoom out and look at the horrifying lesson Kafka leaves us with, returning to that analysis in Ahmet Cemal's Unsöz.
Dönüşüm is defined as the tragedy of the individual in a society fixated on hierarchy and authority. And this structure, initially concentrated within the family, views the individual as just an interchangeable unit, valuable only as long as they contribute.
Gregor was clearly a slave at work and a slave within the family. He was accepted only as long as he obeyed his chains and provided money. His identity was purely transactional.
So his başkalaşım, his radical transformation, is therefore a subconscious, violent rebellion against this enslavement.
And the key profound insight here is that the physical repulsiveness of the insect is synonymous with the repulsiveness of the independent individual. The sürüyle uyuşmayan bağımsız bireyin itisilici.
The person who deviates from the norm. The family, acting as a microcosm of society, finds the free, non-functional individual repugnant and intolerable.
We see this struggle perfectly mirrored in the mother's denial about the furniture. She wanted to keep the room exactly as it was, hoping Gregor would return and forget the time he was a bug.
Forget the period of his independence, his freedom from financial obligation.
She wanted him to forget his potential for freedom and return to the economic herd, to the known cage. The furniture represented the comfortable chains of conformity.
Which brings us back to the psychological irony in Great's final, brutal declaration. She insists that if it were truly Gregor, he would have left of his own accord.
The ultimate devastating irony is that the animal described by Great, the creature that should have realized it was impossible to live with humans and disappeared, is, in reality, the person Gregor needed to be.
The individual who broke from the suffocating social expectations and demanded self-respect, even if that break was catastrophic.
He sacrificed himself, not because he was an animal, but because he was a loving human soul, realizing he was more useful dead than alive.
And what does this all mean for us today, living in societies often defined by relentless productivity and economic anxiety?
As the source analysis concludes, the book remains powerfully relevant until the last societies hostile to individuals who succeed in being individuals are wiped from the face of the earth.
As long as institutions, be they corporate, governmental, or familial, value utility over humanity, and as long as debt dictates freedom, the plight of Gregor Samsa will feel entirely current.
His horror is our horror, the fear of suddenly becoming useless.
This has been a chilling and profoundly detailed deep dive into Franz Kafka's Du Nichtschum.
We've examined the author's intense, painful creative process, the shocking events of the Samsa family's tragedy, and the enduring universal resonance of existential alienation.
We truly hope this exploration has given you a fresh and deeper perspective on Gregor Samsa's fate and the terrifying speed with which society and family moves on once an individual loses their functional utility.
And we need to remember that these complex analyses, they rely heavily on detailed source material.
Absolutely.
And we want to remind you that this detailed summary and literary analysis came directly from the specific sources we cited today, including the valuable context provided by the Daily Books YouTube channel.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider supporting that work by subscribing and liking the content. It helps us keep bringing these detailed explorations to life.
And it keeps us bringing them to you.
We're always looking for the next piece of material to dive into. We are intensely curious about what captivates you.
Yeah. What book or novel has you absolutely mesmerized right now? Drop us a comment and let us know what you'd like us to explore next.
Thank you for tuning in for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.